In 1840, America was a young country. Ambitious people came from all over the world to settle its land and build their first homes. Like all homes, they held favorite places and favorite things. And like all people, they needed a way to keep them secure. In 1844, a precision mechanic and prolific inventor named Linus Yale invented the pin tumbler lock. In 1860, his son Linus Yale Jr. improved on the design and produced the first pin cylinder lock. This revolutionary design has stood the test of time. Versions of it are the most widely used door locks in the world today. Yale is still discovering new ways to help people secure their favorite things.
Tub of hot water.
My den
It's right before I'm about to fall asleep.
sitting at the piano.
It's a workshop.
The beach.
It's home.
I have more than 24 guitars.
My sports gear.
My wine.
Pictures. My wedding ring.
The cabin is very important.
Books.
My puppy.
Door with double locks.
I have to have the alarm systems and have all the security associated with it.
I walk around the house and turn the last of the lights off, lock the doors. I just know that we can sleep peacefully that night.
Surprises are going to be happy ones.
In control.
Or I have sensations around it. Quiet, warmth.
Can be myself.
Close connection with your neighbors.
You don't have to think about it.
Being in a familiar place.
So I know I have people to turn to.
Having my things secure gives me peace of mind.
That I have one less thing to worry about.
That I can think about other things in my life.
Continue on with my business.
I can go out and have a good time.
To do anything my heart desires.
My children's future.
Healthy, happy, prosperous life.
My family.
Being open to learning something new.
My intellectual life.
Getting old and being healthy.
I would like some time.
To do everything I want to do.
I want more of what I have.
Open my restaurant.
Happiness.
Keep getting better at things I choose to do.
Doing my favorite things.
As you've heard, people are securing what's most important to them: their homes, families, and favorite possessions. When our customers know their favorites are safe, they feel free to pursue their lives and be optimistic about the future. That's why we're building a new experience for our customers. We are continually creating new products, services, and distribution channels to fulfill their needs and desires. When our customers become familiar with the Yale Circle, they will know it symbolizes a safe area, a sphere of protection. Today we are the world's favorite lock. Together, we will build one of the world's favorite brands.
100 years. In terms of history, just the blink of an eye. In biological terms, more than a human lifespan. In technology, a time of epic-making developments. From Franca's point of view, the start of a success story. It has been an eventful period, which many companies have not survived. Franca has. Why? More skillful leadership? More loyal customers? Good luck? A mixture of all these. Discover for yourself what makes the spirit of Franca so special. The story began on April 1st, 1911 in the Swiss town of Rorschach with Hermann Franca. An inventive and intrepid spirit, he kept his sheet metal business together through the turmoil of the Great War and its aftermath. His farsightedness and pioneering instinct led to a breakthrough in 1934 with the manufacture of stainless steel sinks, which he supplied nationwide from new headquarters in Aarberg, in the center of Switzerland. When Hermann Franca died suddenly in 1939, his son Walter took over. Under the motto, "We make everything that can be made from stainless steel," he shaped the emergence and development of whole industrial sectors. We have his inventiveness to thank for the 55-centimeter standard unit of the modern domestic kitchen, as well as the standardization of professional kitchens. He also enabled the pioneers of quick-service restaurants to realize their visionary plans. Under Walter Franca, the Swiss company grew well beyond its national boundaries to conquer most of Europe. In 1975, Willy Pieper took over the company from his friend and business partner Walter Franca, whose health was failing. Together with CEO John F. Strasser, Willy Pieper simplified the group's structures and created 5 clearly defined business units. "All I need to run the company can be written on a single sheet of paper," Willy Pieper said of his leadership principle. In 1978, Franca took the bold step of expanding to the United States, which rapidly became a second key market. In 1989, Willy Pieper handed the helm to his son Michael, under the motto, "Concentrate and Dominate." Michael Pieper embarked on a program of systematic geographic expansion. The acquisition of Scottish company Karen Phoenix signaled the start of the campaign in 1990. Expansion through Eastern Europe into Russia, India, and China quickly followed. Growing with customers became a feature of the Franca approach. Today, with over 10,500 employees in some 70 companies and more than 40 countries, Franca is at home around the world and close to its customers, operating through 5 clearly defined business units, each one with the ambitions and performance of a world beater. With the aspiration of bringing individual coffee culture closer to people worldwide. With the aspiration of making delicacies from around the world available anytime, anywhere. With the aspiration of ensuring that all the passion of the brewer's art carries through to the bar. With the aspiration of making a simple and brilliant match between any lifestyle and kitchen design. With the aspiration of offering 50,000 people absolute hygiene all at the same time. The ambition to be world #1 through uncompromising quality and closeness to customers, through an unbridled drive for innovation, fostered by ensuring scope for imagination and entrepreneurship. That is what makes the spirit of Franca so special.
Swiss Quality Understanding.
Es ist ein familiengeführtes Unternehmen und man ist Teil der Familie.
La Franca siamo noi.
Gegenseitiges Vertrauen.
Be close to your customer.
Ein Kunde muss zufrieden sein.
Ja, nur so geht's. Wer die Mitarbeiter gestaltet die Firma.
Well, be passionate what you're doing.
Kreativität.
Zuverlässigkeit.
Unglaubliche Energie.
Engagement und Freundschaft.
Live it, love it, and stand for it.
This spirit has shaped the first 100 years of Franca and will set the course for the next century. Let's take a look at the ideas we are already working on today to change the world for a better tomorrow. As you can see, we still have a lot to do, and we couldn't be better prepared. With uncompromising quality, closeness to customers, and boundless innovative drive. Or put simply, the unique spirit of Franca. In that spirit, here's to the next 100 years.